Hi, everyone. My name's Andy McNeil, and I'm with the Compassionate Friends. And we are um, offering our webinar today. Our title is Finding Peace After Loss. Our presenter is Rob Gore, and I'll say more about Rob in just a moment. Just wanted to let everyone know that, or remind everyone that we do have archived uh, webinars on our website. Feel free to go and click on any of those to view it. Our webinar today is being recorded. We'll have time at the end for maybe some questions. So if you do have questions along the way, please drop those in the Q&A feature. If you select more, I think that'll come up for you. Rather than putting the questions in the chat, it's a little easier for us to track the questions if you put it in the Q&A feature as opposed to the chat. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today, Finding Peace After Loss. Rob Gore is a a good friend. I have appreciated getting to know Rob over the last year or so. Rob is the chapter leader at the Potomac chapter for TCF. He is also the author of the book Dear Andrew, and I'll let him share more about that as well. And then Rob also served as our one of our co-chairs for our conference this year that we held back the beginning of July, beginning of this month in Baltimore, Maryland, and did a wonderful job there. And um, I just wanted to say, Rob, delighted to have you share this webinar. Rob has presented in the past, has received a lot of really great feedback from those who sat under his instruction. And I know that I'm a richer person and a deeper person for having known you, Rob. And you have touched my heart again as we've gotten to know each other over the past couple of years. So, Rob, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and look forward to hearing you present today.
Thank you, Andy. And it's certainly been great to get to know you as well. I too am a richer person for it. So my name is Rob Gore, and as Andy said, I'm chapter lead for the Potomac, Maryland chapter. I am a bereaved parent as well as a bereaved sibling, and this is a webinar on finding peace after loss. Finding peace has been a journey for me, and I hope this workshop will begin a journey for you. In my opinion, a Union Station is an appropriate place to start a journey. So all aboard. It seems just a short time ago, but it was 2010 when I found myself at a Compassionate Friends facilitator training. The training was just beginning and the trainer started a go-around of the attendees. Say a few words about yourself and why you want to become a meeting facilitator. I had been part of many a meeting that began with just such a go-around. Introduce yourself. And usually I spent my time and attention before it became my turn by planning what I would say. But this time was different. I listened intently to each person. I want to help my chapter. My chapter was really helpful to me, and I want to give back. I was asked to volunteer. And suddenly it was my turn, and I hadn't thought about what to say, why I was there. And then I heard it as if from a great distance. I have come to a place in my life and in my grief where I have found peace, and I want to share it. And then I thought, wait, what? Peace? What does that even mean? I certainly never thought I would ever find peace, much less to say what I said. And so, how do I even know that it's true? Well, one way I know it's true is that for the first 62 years or so of my life, I bit my fingernails. It wasn't just a habit, it was a compulsion. Oh, how many times I tried to stop, but never with any success. So I had just given up trying altogether when a short time before the training in 2010, I noticed these things growing at the ends of my fingers. At the time, I just thought, I guess I'll just have to learn how to take care of them. Did you know they actually sell tools for dealing with those things at the ends of your fingers? Nail files, clippers? Yeah, I bet you did. Well, I didn't, and I didn't think anything more about it until I heard myself say, I found peace. And there it is again, that phrase so pregnant with meaning. But what meaning? It turns out I'd been mistaken about peace for most of my life. I can certainly tell you what peace of mind is not. It's not an end to troubling thoughts, to worry, to anger, to fear. I am, after all, still a human being. It is not accepting the world as it is. It is certainly not accepting what happened, the deaths of my son and my brother. It is not accepting what happened to your loved ones. Rather, peace of mind is an acceptance of self, a welcoming of self. It's a welcoming of all you feel, all you think. It is a welcoming of all you don't feel and all you don't think. And it is an end to judging yourself and how you feel. So now, to explore these concepts with you, I have to tell you more of my story. But first of all, a disclaimer. I'm not a therapist. I've had a lot of therapy, but I'm not a therapist. Now, my wife, who is a professional therapist, now retired, has told me, you're a talented amateur, but you are an amateur. So now, where to begin? At the beginning, as with you all, there's been more than one beginning in my life. So, which one? Perhaps it's important to start at a beginning before the beginning. It was 1985. I had two lovely children, Leah, 11, and Andrew, 6, and a job I loved. Nevertheless, my life was a mess. I couldn't describe how I felt, but I knew that something had to change. I confided my doubts and worries to a friend who said, have I got a therapist for you? That was when I met Roz and Fred, graduates of the School of Humanistic Psychotherapy. I learned that the philosophy of that approach is as follows. The client has all the wisdom they need to make healthy life decisions and to have a meaningful and satisfying life. But because the client has feelings that are blocked, he or she cannot make those decisions. The blocked feelings get in the way, and the client is stuck. In this philosophy, then, the role of the therapist is to help the client to unblock their feelings, to help the client fully express their feelings. I learned that most people, including me, have strong feelings about having feelings. For many of us, our childhood experiences in our families of origin skewed our relationship with our own feelings. For most of us, society reinforces unhealthy attitudes toward feelings. Boys are taught that feelings in general, and crying in particular, are unmanly. Women who express feelings are called drama queens, and on and on. Even Shakespeare recognized this societal pressure. In the play Macbeth, Macduff has just learned that his whole family, wife and children, have been murdered. Helplessly, tearfully, and in shock, he repeats over and over, all, all. His men urge him to take it like a man, and resisting the pressure to stifle his pain and grief, he replies, I am. I'm feeling it like a man. As a culture, we're terrified of death to the point that we avoid talking about it directly. Indirectly, though, the word dead permeates our casual conversations. To name just a few examples, a deadline, which used to be a line in the sand in the Andersonville prison during the Civil War, that prisoners crossed at the peril of their lives, that's now a due date. A radio station that is not on the air is said to be broadcasting dead air, and that would most likely be in the dead of night. A dead end is a road with no exit other than its entrance, and someone who has stated a fact might be either dead right or dead wrong. Often, people I meet say how uncomfortable they are with the common feelings of grief, how they are ashamed of crying, how vulnerable they feel when they express their pain, their anger, their grief, how judged they feel, even in supportive environments like the Compassionate Friends, if they should give in to their feelings of loss. Even that phrase, give in to feelings, implies a judgment for the natural act of expressing feelings, as if the feelings themselves imply some sort of weakness. Underlying many of the learned feelings is probably a fear of judgment and even isolation from family, friends, and community. In the world of humanistic psychotherapy, no feelings are out of bounds. By alleviating the feelings about having feelings, clients are freed to just feel naturally and without reservation. For myself, I learned that my upbringing had caused me to suppress almost my entire emotional persona. My parents made me doubt by saying, for example, in response to my sadness, you don't feel that. My mother taught me that my anger could kill my father, who had heart disease. Eventually, I learned that neither was true. The thing is, the feelings we have about having feelings are learned or adapted responses. No infant is born ashamed of crying. No 2-year-old is afraid of anger. These feelings are not about who we are, but instead they're about external reactions from others to who we are. And what is learned can be unlearned. From Roz and Fred, I learned the power of music to evoke feelings, sometimes hiding below the surface. Fred used to say that music is the rational bypass, the medium that speaks directly to the heart. With its rhythms, its tonality, its poetry, music slips deftly past the critical and judgmental brain and lodges comfortably in our core. In a way, music is the language of feeling. How many times music has helped me to feel and to express my own sadness, anger, and even joy. In the words of Andy McNeil, music has helped me and others I know lean into the feelings that are already there, deep inside us. Unexpressed, such feelings nevertheless hold sway over our lives, our choices. Attempting to control or stifle feelings, consciously or unconsciously, because of those feelings about having feelings, leads to internal conflict. Conflict between needing to feel and trying not to feel, fighting not to feel, or trying to feel something different from what is truly inside. And that conflict is the antithesis of peace of mind. Finally, this internal emotional war can ultimately lead to isolation from self, the deepest form of loneliness. Most of us learn to classify feelings, the so-called negative feelings like sadness and anger, and the so-called positive feelings like joy. We learn to think of ourselves as either happy when we have positive feelings or unhappy when we have negative feelings. We often think of positive feelings as good and negative feelings as bad. So when we have a so-called negative feeling, we judge ourselves as bad or in a bad place. We even describe our feelings as bad or good when they are neither. Our very greetings ask us to judge ourselves. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Well, how does one answer that? I'm doing well, meaning I have only so-called positive feelings and I'm in a good place, or I'm doing poorly or so-so, meaning I have some so-called negative feelings and I'm in a bad place. Notice the imbalance. As a society, we don't want to have negative feelings, only positive ones. In one Peanuts cartoon from many years ago, Lucy Van Pelt claims she doesn't want down days, She only wants up days and more up days and upper up days. Between classifying feelings as either negative or positive and judging the result, we heighten our internal conflict. In fact, all feelings are just feelings, no classification, no judgment. So now I'm going to resume my story at a different beginning, a beginning which marks a stark ending, a beginning that cleaved my life in two, all that came before and all that has happened since. It is a beginning that, as time is measured, happened a long time ago, over 38 years. But as feeling is measured, it happened just a moment ago, on a day that will live forever on the edge of yesterday. My greatest hope for today is that my story informs, yes, but it also helps you to feel. What do I want you to feel? Anything, everything. It was an overcast day in May 1988, with an imminent rain hanging in the air, and I was in the midst of a divorce. It was Thursday, a visitation day. As I turned onto the street where I used to live, where my 8-year-old son Andrew lived, I saw him kneeling in a wagon on the ribbon of lawn between the sidewalk and the street. In the background stood his friend. Moments later, I watched helplessly as Andrew's wagon went into the street where he was hit by an SUV. I knew immediately that my life would never be the same. And as I saw it in 1988, I see it again. Andrew, the wagon, and the SUV, and then the awful, awful silence as the light rain began to fall. Here's what I'd like you to take away from this. I am describing a moment of deep trauma. Yes, but I also understand that we all have had the trauma of our loved one's death. The details of your trauma are almost certainly different from mine, but in the end, what we have all experienced, in addition to loss, is trauma. We all have that moment, just a moment ago, that cleaved our lives in two. Whether it was a phone call, a knock on the door, a hospital bed, a shocking discovery. Nobody's trauma is worse or easier than anyone else's. Each of our losses has visited upon us its own unique horror, and our scars include the loss, yes, but also the resulting trauma of that moment. In this, we are all one. I had been working in therapy to recover the inner feelings I had suppressed from childhood. But at that moment, the instant of unspeakable tragedy, a switch seemed to have flipped inside me, and my shock and grief bubbled uncontrolled to the surface. Previously, the neighborhood had been empty of all but the two boys and myself. And now suddenly it seemed that neighbors poured out into the scene. I found myself sobbing in the street as a family friend held me. I was lucky. I had friends who came, friends who stayed. I had friends, none of whom had lost a child, but who nevertheless seemed to know exactly what to do, what to say. Whatever I said, whatever I thought, all of it was accepted. Subsequently, whenever we got together, they didn't wait for me to talk about Andrew. They brought him into the conversation, in questions and in memory. With them, I felt welcome in the fullest sense. Soon thereafter, in shock and pain, I knew that I needed to reach out to my son. So I began to write him letters, not every day, but rather as my evolving feelings dictated. I often wrote when I was confronted by situations and feelings I didn't understand. At times, I read them aloud, which felt like a form of oral postage to speed them to Andrew. Given that Andrew no longer had a future, I had no thought of a future for myself. What could I possibly look forward to? How could anything ever be important to me again? I found a support group for bereaved parents run by a professional social worker. As it happened, the group was not affiliated with the Compassionate Friends, but it was life-saving. I continued to work in therapy on the varied and intense feelings we are all familiar with, and with no pressure from anyone to fit into a time schedule, no pressure to get over it. Instead, I met parents who were newly bereaved, like myself, parents who were kindred spirits. Like me, they too sensed that the world was fundamentally altered. The air, the sidewalk, other people, all felt somehow different, as if we now lived in a copy, albeit an imperfect one, of the world we had occupied all our previous lives. So I wasn't going crazy, or if I was, at least I had company. And my support group leader told me that my job going forward was to figure out how I would continue to be Andrew's father. This idea was way ahead of its time. The prevailing philosophy behind treating grief in the late 20th century was for the therapist to help the grief-stricken to move past the loss, to recognize the end of the relationship. By contrast, Anne was teaching that death ends a life, but not a relationship. She put words to the purpose behind my letters to Andrew. I was learning a lot now. I was learning that I was not alone in how I felt and that I could begin to care again, in spite of everything. I was learning that Andrew would always be my son, even through the depth of our losses. Eventually, I came to a place where I needed to talk to someone about a seed that had taken root deep inside myself, and the only one who could satisfy that need was Andrew. On a warm August day, I sought out a secluded spot in a wood where I lay beneath the shelter of the sky, and lying on my back, I opened my arms to the universe and I called aloud, Andrew, I need to tell you something about myself, and it's important. It's also hard for me, but I have to tell you anyway. I have some life to live yet, and I want to truly live every minute of it. It's not that I need to forget about you or even to stop mourning, but I need to discover the life I was meant to live. Maybe even in part because yours was cut so short. I need to climb my own tree now more than ever. In retrospect, this was the first time that I consciously chose life. What does it mean to choose life? To me, it means to choose to be fully human, to honor and express the full range of feelings and thoughts that we are capable of. This was my first time. It turned out, however, I would have to decide again and again. I remember thinking to myself, this is where I am right now, deeply grieving, dealing with trauma, trying to find my way in a world suddenly gone dark. Maybe I won't always be in this place, but this is where I am right now. Living to the fullest then also meant grieving to the fullest. I could not imagine that I was on a journey that would lead to peace of mind, that my decisions and commitments would lead to peace. If anyone had told me that peace of mind was in my future, I would have thought them delusional. For most of my life before, I had wondered if I would ever find peace of mind. After my son died, I stopped thinking about peace. I knew deep down that I would never know serenity. Instead, I suppose I tried one day at a time, merely to accept whatever I felt, whatever I thought. And so I confess it was with no small surprise that I heard myself say before a large group that I had found peace. Then Around the year 2017, my oldest brother, Ron, who had always been the picture of health, began to lose his memory. Something completely hidden had been changing in his brain, and the man he was for my whole life, the man who taught me so much in my childhood, began to fade away before my eyes. He died of Alzheimer's in 2021. He was 81 years old and, to outward appearance, still a young man. Now all the people who have known me for my entire life are gone, and there is an emptiness in the world where my family used to live. Over the rest of our time together, these are the topics I want to cover: trauma, feelings we have about having feelings, how to be aware of them, how to address them, the feelings we have in grief, the importance of expressing them and how to express them, and possible links between them, and how the compassionate friends can help with all of the above. I think of the journey to peace of mind as building a bridge. Each of these topics is a span in the bridge, a part of the whole. While I intend this as a practical introduction to attaining peace, I'm aware that what I teach is not easy to do. But as with any activity that is worthwhile, improvement is possible with practice over time. Finally, I want to talk to you about what peace of mind is and how it feels. But first, I want to begin with a discussion of something you probably do over 14,000 times a day. You breathe. Of course you do. How else could you stay alive? But not all breaths are created equal. Belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing uses the diaphragm to pull air deeply into the lungs, causing your stomach to expand. It maximizes oxygen intake and triggers the body's relaxation response. Chest breathing uses upper rib cage muscles, resulting in shallow breaths. It's less efficient, increases stress, and can cause neck and shoulder tension. Belly breathing makes it easier to feel emotion, while chest breathing inhibits feelings. The reason this is important is that the intensity of feelings that accompany grief can cause anxiety or even panic. Anxiety, in turn, can cause rapid, shallow chest breathing, which only increases the anxiety. Belly breathing, on the other hand, helps to make us feel grounded and better able to handle the flood of emotions we all experience. So let's practice belly breathing. So if you want to stand, that might help. Please do. Put your right hand on your chest and your left hand, which you may not be able to see on the screen, on your stomach. If you inhale using your chest, the right hand will move. If you inhale using your diaphragm, your left hand will move. If you take a really deep breath using your diaphragm, both will move. So there are different breath sequences for calming yourself. The one I like for myself is to inhale through the nose for a count of 4, and then exhale through the mouth more slowly for a count of 8. And it can help to purse your lips a little bit so that the air is naturally inhibited as it goes out. Belly breathing gives us a tool for those times when our emotions seem so overwhelming that we don't know how to go on. It can be a tool when sharing in a TCF meeting or with an understanding friend. Taking a moment to focus on breathing, particularly belly breathing, can be a grounding experience. It probably won't make the intense feelings go away, but it can make them more manageable. It can give a greater sense of control. But then that begs the question, why do we have to feel all of these intense emotions, these so-called negative feelings? It would be tempting to think that all you have to do is to suppress the so-called negative feelings or to distract yourself to just get through it. Of course, it's not so simple. Studies have shown that long-term suppression of emotions, intentional or otherwise, is not a healthy strategy. They show that long-term suppression reduces the ability to think clearly. Suppression contributes to increased intensity and psychological distress, and suppression of either negative, so-called negative, and even so-called positive feelings reduces happiness. In other words, suppression of feelings produces the opposite of peace of mind. So classifying feelings by thinking of them as either negative or positive, bad or good, causes internal conflict, and suppression, attempted or otherwise, causes internal conflict. It's important then, eventually, to come to a place where we view all emotions without judgment as natural and appropriate and to express them. But how? Studies have shown we need to express our feelings both verbally and in some way physically. So this makes sense because emotions may originate in the brain, but are expressed by and remembered in the body. So just thinking and talking about feelings is not enough. They must be released by the body as well. So we're all familiar with the common feelings of grief, which I've listed here, and there are more. And each of these can be challenging in its own way. But most of us have feelings about having these feelings. So how do we deal with those feelings? The answer is similarly. We express those learned feelings verbally and physically, yes, but part of it is different. So let's talk about verbally first. It's the same no matter the origin of the feeling. While verbal expression of feelings is vital, the quality of the audience for that expression is equally vital. In Compassionate Friends meetings, we know that all the members present want to be there. They want to hear what everyone has to say. They want to hear what you have to say. Everyone wants to hear your story and wants to hear how you feel. In other words, you, in a full sense, are welcomed. This is a process called witnessing. A witness is someone who wants to hear what you have to say, wants to know how you feel. This is crucial to the functioning of the Compassionate Friends. By contrast, an unwitnessed event, when the listener is not an intentional participant, actually intensifies the trauma and intensifies the loss. And we've all experienced unwitnessed events when we share our loss with people that we don't know, when we speak with people whose commitment or ability to provide emotional support are unknown and may prove to be non-existent. In a witnessed event, there is an unspoken agreement that says, let us visit this place together. Being witnessed is important for the feelings about feelings, the feelings themselves, and the trauma. But lifelong feelings about having feelings thrive in darkness, in secrecy, as does trauma. Only daylight can reduce their significance in your life. A living space for growth and change comes only through sharing and then learning that you are not alone. In summary, a witnessing audience accepts you, your feelings, and your trauma, and more than that, a witnessing audience welcomes you. A witnessing audience becomes a presence, a willing presence that reinforces that you need not be alone, a feeling that you can internalize and carry with you. This is a verbal expression of your feelings and your trauma. Physical expression is also important. But feelings about feelings, the learned feelings, have power over you in that they constrict your behavior and they cause internal tension. Just thinking about them is not enough to gain relief. The physical expression of learned feelings requires an action that opposes the past teaching. understanding, and even sharing are not enough to reduce the power of these feelings. What to do then? Often these feelings are based on events that happened among a homogeneous group of people. That group of people may not, in general, represent the behavior of the rest of the world. The feelings, though, are strong, and the fear is that everybody else will behave in a similar manner. What can we do to take a risk that might unblock underlying feelings, to challenge the possibly unconscious assumptions that can keep us stuck? In a TCF meeting, for example, a member could say, I would like to talk about my sadness, but I feel ashamed of my tears. Or, I would like to talk about my anger, but I'm uncomfortable with anger. I feel intimidated. Or, I feel like crying, but I don't feel that's okay to cry in public. In these examples, the speakers in the meeting did several things at once. They expressed their feelings about having feelings, they expressed their underlying feelings, and they risked being open about these feelings in front of others, in spite of their learned concern about consequences. In this way, they each confronted their learned behavior, but they were able to do it in a supportive, witnessing environment. Over time, and with continued sharing, they're likely to find that sharing gets easier and more natural. So I want to continue with physical approaches that can address trauma. Trauma involves changes in how the brain processes threat and safety. Two parts of the brain play a role, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala acts like a fire alarm, detecting danger and activating survival responses. The hippocampus helps organize memories and provides context, such as recognizing when something is no longer happening. This is why trauma can feel less like a memory and more like something that is still happening. The first approach that is known to deal with trauma is called EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. EMDR involves rapidly alternating left-right stimuli, and it's been found to be highly effective in treating trauma. It does require a therapist. It doesn't make you forget, but somehow it reprograms the traumatic event so that it now belongs in the past, not the present. A second treatment is EFT, the emotional freedom technique. Once learned, EFT can be performed on your own anywhere you are. EFT does not require a therapist, and I have benefited from both EMDR and EFT. The intensity of grief feelings can feel overwhelming. Given our feelings about having feelings, it's natural to try to suppress them. It can have been a lifelong impulse, almost as old as we are, an almost automatic response. But suppose you're at work, in the middle of a meeting, it would probably not be appropriate for you to express sorrow or anger at that time. So, what to do? When I've been in such a circumstance, I have addressed the emotion silently in my head, saying, I can't give you time right now, but I know you are important, and I promise I will spend time with you this evening. And then later, when I'm alone or with supportive people, I honor that promise. Crying, of course, is a natural physical expression of sorrow. At times when I realize that I've not cried recently and I sense that I needed to, I've scheduled time alone or with a supportive friend, and I've listened to music, the rational bypass. Which music have I found effective has evolved over the years, but currently the music from Les Mis is always effective. Which songs particularly? Empty Chairs, Empty Tables, Bring Him Home, and especially A Little Fall of Rain. Other physical approaches to dealing with trauma and with feelings in general include writing, art, strenuous exercise, making meaning in whatever way resonates with you has also been found to be important. There could be entire workshops on ways of making meaning. One straightforward way of making meaning is to continue to be involved in the Compassionate Friends with the goal of helping others, those who are newly bereaved, those who are struggling, as we all did in the beginning. And you can write a journal, or as I did, letters to your loved one. I know people who have found satisfaction in scrapbooking, or in painting, or drawing. Anger can be a particularly troublesome feeling. Many associate anger with aggression or violence. Many feel unsafe when they or those around them express anger. Fred once told me that when he first became a therapist, he was uncomfortable with anger. Fortunately, he said, none of his clients had any anger. But then he went to therapy and worked on his own anger issues, and suddenly all of his clients had anger issues as well. He added that he came to feel most grateful when clients shared their anger issues with him because anger is usually connected to the deepest, most vulnerable feelings that people have, and it meant that they trusted him. Safe ways to express anger include screaming, hitting a pillow with a tennis racket, more about that in a minute, hitting a punching bag, tearing something, preferably something unimportant. If you're going to hit a pillow with a tennis racket, don't hold it the way you hold a tennis racket. Hold it with two hands. And if you are bending down to hit the pillow, bend with your knees, not your back. These are ways to keep from hurting yourself. And if you're going to hit a punching bag, use gloves to protect your hands. At times, when I was at work and I felt rage at Andrew's death, I left the office and went to my car in the parking lot. There, with windows closed, I screamed as loudly as I could and hit the steering wheel. Afterwards, refreshed, I returned to work. Most intense feelings are like that. They come in waves, waves that can feel like tsunamis. Imagine trying to hold back a tsunami. But once expressed, they wash over and then the air is clear again, at least until the next wave. My experience is that once I have expressed intense feelings with matching physical activity, I feel lighter, as if a burden has been lifted, a debt paid, and I feel ready to rejoin the world. Sometimes we experience seemingly opposite feelings simultaneously. This can be particularly intense, but in a way not surprising. There's no reason emotions have to come one at a time. It's not an either-or situation, but both and. In Khalil Gibran's the prophet is asked to speak of joy, and he replies, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. In other words, how deep is your well of sorrow? So deep can be your joy. Gibran writes that joy and sorrow are inseparable. If one sits alone with you at your table, then the other is asleep in your bed. On December 31st, 1989, my wife and I were at a New Year's Eve Manhattan Transfer concert with dear friends. The music was wonderful, and I was aware that my feet were tapping in time, and simultaneously, tears were streaming down my cheeks. You see, it was another ending in my life. It was the end of the decade in which Andrew had lived most of his life. We're conditioned to focus on our brains, our reasoning ability, often to the exclusion of feeling, but feeling is an equal partner in our being. Again, from the prophet, your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. Without the sails, the boat doesn't move. Without the rudder, the boat has no direction. It is in this way that all your feelings are important in your life, both the so-called positive ones and the so-called negative ones. Your anger can protect you from danger or provide an impetus to make a positive change. The poet Rilke wrote about sorrow. He said that it's important to be patient with your sadness, to all that is unsolved in your heart. and seek not an answer, because the future enters into you when you are sad, and you may gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So, how did I arrive here at this place of peace? There were some signs along the way, some corners I turned, although I admit I didn't recognize them as such at the time. At some point, I realized that I had come to a place where my first thought of Andrew was not his death, but a memory of his life. And after some years, I became aware that I no longer anticipated special days with apprehension. Instead, they became like every other day, opportunities to feel whatever I needed to feel and to remember. My life and my grief for all the loved ones I have lost has been a journey whose final destination is not listed. And I don't think of peace of mind as a destination, but rather part of my journey, a journey propelled in great part by this key. I tried to accept whatever I felt, whatever I thought. So if you're not comfortable with feelings, especially intense feelings, I get it. I wasn't comfortable either at first. Those feelings about having feelings get in the way. And it's a huge step from seemingly never having to deal with emotions to having your life upended by the most complex and intense feelings imaginable. Something else I learned from Roz and Fred. It's important to become comfortable with being uncomfortable because it's the only way to grow physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And it bears repeating. It's important to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And because of that, accepting whatever you feel is the key to peace of mind. And more than that, it's the key to a life fully lived and shared. It's so easy to say, to accept whatever you feel, whatever you think, whatever you don't feel, whatever you don't think. I think you'll agree, not so easy to do. But especially at the beginning of our grief, we desperately want others to accept and welcome our whole selves, our loss and our resulting feelings. In our lives, we want to be welcomed. Can we then not do for ourselves what we ask of others? Can we not welcome our own feelings as we would have others do? Accepting your feelings is the beginning. The final key to peace of mind is to welcome whatever you feel. And it helps others who associate with you to accept and welcome who you are and where you are. And to me, this is the key to peace of mind. Peace is not an absence, as I thought for most of my life. If it were a void in my heart of hearts, nature would find a way to fill it, and thoughts and feelings would flow in, random and tortuous, and any initial perception of serenity would quickly drown. No, this peace is a presence, an acceptance of self, an acceptance of lack of control of feeling, and a trust of feeling. So, how does it feel to have peace of mind? For most of my life, I experienced tension centered in my stomach, a tension that was the result of an internal war between what I truly felt and what I wanted to feel, or rather, what I wanted to not feel. That tension is gone. And instead, I experience a more generous outward empathy than ever before. And because I can grieve fully, I can also love fully. This summarized peace of mind is not an end to troubling thoughts. These feelings are the natural byproducts of caring for yourself and others. It's not accepting the world as it is, and it's not certainly not accepting what happened to my loved ones and to yours. It's not a place of mere contentment or complacency or an absence of deep feeling. Peace of mind is an acceptance of self, a welcoming of self, all you feel and all you think. And it's an end to judging yourself and how you feel. And I have one final slide. This is from a letter from me to Andrew. This peace is definitely a presence, not an absence. It is an acceptance, a form of being. It is the living presence seemingly of another species. It is timeless and yet of the moment. This peace is solemn, yes, but sensible and even sensitive. It seeks to reach out, to share by harmonizing all it touches. It is a soft melody that sings in the beating of the heart, soundlessly, hoping all can hear. It is a positive pressure that exactly balances within against without, above against below, open against closed. It is the soft voice of experience and even wisdom, and it is no longer silent. It says, "Come to me with your woes, and I will share my caring. Come to me with your sorrow, and I will share my understanding. Come to me with your despair, and I will share my hope." And I hope that you too, my friends, will find peace of mind. Thank you.
Rob, thank you. Thank you for this. I was vigorously taking notes as you were sharing, and once again, you just you know, you spoke directly to my to my heart today. So thank you for what you shared. And I'm getting some similar sentiments in the chat as well. There was one question. We do have a few minutes. If you do have a question that came up, if you would like me to read it and have a chance to ponder on it or share. Um, question says, I can't help but feel cheated. 17 years ago, I lost my son, Zach. I'm a chapter leader. I'm at peace, but I'm not at the high of highs or low of lows. I would say melancholy. To this day, sometimes I feel disconnected from a lot of people. Is this a norm for people on our grief journey?
Well, it certainly can be. There certainly are a lot of people who in the world who have not had our experience who don't get it. Um, I mean, you're probably different from a lot of people in a lot of ways. So this is just one of those ways. I don't think I don't know that highs and lows. Again, I wouldn't judge how you're feeling. A melancholy is certainly a feeling and an important one. And with melancholy often comes reflection, and and this is part of the Rilke quote that your future enters into you when you're sad. Um, and feeling cheated is also normal. So, um, yeah, and certainly if you would like to talk with me further, I think that the first slide had my email address on it, and I welcome your comments, questions, or whatever.
Thank, thanks, Rob. I think if there's so much that you shared today, but one of the things, that I pulled from this is that all feelings are valid. And, we tend in our society to give, positive or negatives to feelings. And melancholy is a feeling and, all of those are feelings. Um, and I think that certainly I heard you validate that those are feelings that any of us can have
Yeah,
at whatever
yeah.
point we might be in our
In
life.
fact, I was at in West Virginia. They have a theater festival, and I went to several of the plays, and my friend who lives there asked me, "Well, how was it?" I said, "Well, the play, it was wonderful, and it made me sad." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I said, "I'm not."
Right. Right.
I look for meaning and feelings. All feelings give meaning
Yeah.
to events.
Yeah. Um, some folks are asking if you could share just say your email. I'll type it in and I'll share it with everyone one more time if you.
Sure, sure. It's on that first slide. I can show that.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, if you can go back to the first slide, that'd be.
let's see. Um, oh, here, I know how to do it.
As Rob's looking for his email, I just want to say again, thank you,
Here it is.
Rob. Thank you for sharing. There we go. There he is. Down at the
Ma-
bottom, math guy
Mathguy at
at
robertgore.com.
robertgore.com. That's two O's.
Yes, like door, but with a G.
Yep. Um, well, Rob, again, thank you. Thank you so much for providing this session today, finding peace after loss. You've given us a lot to think about, to ponder, to consider, and I think have validated so many folks who've been on here. Just a reminder to everyone, you can go to the TCF website. If you click on Find Support and scan down the options, you can click on our webinars, and we have a lot of different titles. I believe our next webinar, I believe I'm presenting one next week or the week after. So again, it'll be listed there that you can see and register. If you have ideas for topics for webinars, please share it. Just drop us an email. You can drop me an email at andy@compassionatefriends.org. It's very simple, andy@compassionatefriends.org. And we'll consider those titles. Or if you yourself have presented in the past and people have found it effective and helpful to them, please reach out to us. Let us know. Our goal is to offer these webinars as many as we can, as often as we can, for folks at no cost, no charge. We just want to provide another way of getting good information, feeling a sense of connection, and continuing to build our community. So thank you. And with that, I'll bid you all a peaceful rest of your day. Rob, again, thank
Th-
you.
th- Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. And uh, will the comments be made available, or
I will make those available to you.
thank you.
Um, yep, you're very welcome.
Thank you
All
all.
right. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you all down the road.